Hey everybody, this is attempt number 2 at trying to make this video because I'm trying to use my phone to record a video because I still can't find my kid's GoPro, and people keep calling me and it keeps messing me up, ask me stupid questions. But anyway, so I wanted to make a video about what I'm going to be attempting to do over the winter with this car. If you're unaware, it's my '84 Corvette that's LS swapped with an built LQ9. This engine, it's on my engine stand, is an LS6. It's not a real LS6, it's an LS1 block, and then it has junkyard 243 heads on it, and I have an Elgin cam in there, but for my purposes, I called it an LS6. Heads are bone stock, they've never been machined, and you can see they're relatively clean compared to most truck heads anyway. These ones actually came off of a Impala SS and LS4 that I pulled out of a junkyard. I think they only had 60,000 miles on them or something before the car was totaled. So they're pretty low mileage heads as far as LS heads go. This motor was an LQ9 that I pulled out of a '04 or '05 Cadillac. And I put on, you can see there, 799 heads. Which, if you're an LS parts guy like me, you basically understand that made an iron block LS2. And that's really what I wanted, was an iron block LS2. The LQ9s and the LS2s use the same flat top pistons with Gen 4 rods, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, that gives me almost 11-to-1 compression. And I put in a Summit Stage 2 cam and then the fast intake, not really because I wanted it, but because it was one of the only intakes that would really fit under the hood. And this one, instead of the LS6 intake, has the bosses in it for nitrous, which is another project over the winter that I'm going to talk a little bit about. But anyway, I ported these heads whenever I put this together. I bought a set of double cup burrs and sanding rolls, and I went to town on them. I opened them up to, I believe, like 220 cc, I want to say, and I actually checked them with food coloring and water and all that stuff. I used the methods from Headflow Inc. If you have never seen his YouTube channel, check him out. He's really, really informative. Yes, I hate his accent. Please don't take offense to that, but I love your channel. I learned a lot from it, but man, I got a problem with Southern accents, I guess. Anyway, great channel, great. Seems like I mean, I don't know him personally, but seems like a great guy, very informative. And I used his methods on how to port these heads. The problem is, I don't know how good of a job I really did. The car has some spots when you're accelerating that, especially low end, seems to be lacking a little bit compared to when I had this engine in here. Now, that may be because of a different camshaft profile, that may be because of the intake, but I'm debating maybe I have some inconsistency in these heads. I mean, I've never ported a set of heads before. I'm just a dumb redneck. What do I know? So I decided, let's ante up a little bit. Let's do something a little bit better. I got a new job. Those of you that know me personally know I used to be a teacher at a trade school, and I quit teaching. I'm now a hydroelectric maintenance technician at a dam here in Pennsylvania, at a hydroelectric facility. So you can imagine going from a teaching job to being a maintenance guy in a power plant. That was a pretty substantial increase in my pay. So I can kind of afford some cool toys, as opposed to what I did before, or what I could afford before. So here's my idea. I am going to pull the 243s off of this engine. That's what I'm working on right now. And I pulled these two valve springs because I was doing a little experiment here. But I'm pulling these 243s. I'm going to send them off to Total Engine Airflow and have their Stage 2 port service done with bigger valves. And I went back and forth on this, even back when I built this motor, debating if I wanted to have these heads ported or not professionally. And I decided to try it myself. Just why not? The heads were free. I paid nothing for them. I picked them up out of a mud puddle, or this engine was that I got these heads off of was like a 2010 Silverado or something like that. I got it on a wheelbarrow sale at my local You Pull and Pay. So I paid like nothing for these heads. They're basically free. So it's like, okay, I can port them. Yes, I had so many hours into doing it, but whatever. You know what I mean? I don't have any money into it. I could probably sell these heads, honestly, even though I ground on them and ported them the best that I could. Maybe somebody would give me a couple $100 for them. I don't know. They do seem to work well. I mean, upper RPM performance is excellent out of this engine. It's amazing. It's kind of scary, to be honest with you. Low end, though, it just doesn't seem to have quite the grunt that I want. I'm debating if there's some inconsistencies in the heads, and that's what I'm looking at. So I might try to sell these, and I'll be very honest with whoever buys them that, hey, maybe I messed them up, but, you know, whatever. Take your chances. So maybe I can get a couple $100 out of them. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to take these and send them off to have their stage 2 port service. I just got a quote back from them. It's $1,300. And people will say, well, why don't you just buy a set of trick flow heads? Well, let's address that. The only thing that's even comparable price-wise to a set of aftermarket heads is the fastest cast trick flow 220s. The fastest cast trick flow 220s, for one, you can't get them in stock anywhere. Nobody has them. They're $1,000 a head. So you're looking at $2,000 for a new set of heads that will not flow nearly as well as a CNC ported set of total engine airflows or advanced induction heads. Not even close. I'm not going to put Texas Speed in here. I love Texas Speed, but to be honest with you, their porting service is not great. If you compare the flow numbers and you compare dyno numbers of their heads versus other people's, they're just not removing a lot of material. I called and talked to their tech there a while ago and asked some technical questions about how they port their heads, and they couldn't answer basic questions about what they open up on their stage 1 service, if they opened up their valve throats and to what percentage. He didn't even know what I was talking about. So I'm really hesitant to send heads. I know lots of people have, and they've made really good power with Texas Speed heads, their porting service. If you have, more power to you. But my experience in calling them and dealing with them on the phone about porting service, nobody seems to know what they do exactly. Nobody can give me exact details. And not to mention their flow numbers, at least advertised on their website, assuming they're honest, aren't good. They kind of suck. And I know they say you can't base everything off flow numbers. Well, what else do I have to base it off of? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I know total engine airflow is a top-notch head porter. I know advanced induction is also a top-notch head porter. For larger 6 liters and up. That's kind of where you want to be. For smaller 5.3s, 4.8s, things like that, I would either go with K-Tech. Lingenfelder, believe it or not, LPE has a really good head porting program for an LS1 or a 5.3 or something like that for 243 heads. It's $1,000 for the pair, and they're very good from what I can tell, and they're an awesome company to deal with. K-Tech is too, but again, they're only porting these out to like a 215cc, something like that. T and Advanced Induction are taking these out to a 235, which is more what you would want for a 6 liter. Okay, so you got to kind of look. It's not just flow numbers, it's also what displacement do you have and things like that. I want to go bigger because I have a little bit more displacement, is my logic. And I would rather have that upper RPM power than, maybe some of that low. If I was only concerned with low RPM grunt, I would just take these stock 243s and throw them on there, with an LS6 intake and call it a day. Anyway, long story short, what I'm going to do, here's my dilemma. I don't want to spend a ton of money on valve springs and keepers and all that stuff. I just don't. Companies like T and Advanced Induction or whoever, they kind of upcharge you on this stuff a little bit. And I don't blame them. Their prices on valve springs and titanium retainers and all this nonsense is kind of high compared to buying it yourself from Summit Racing, for example. This engine right here, these springs that are in it are Pac 1218s. They are good to 600 lift, okay? Because the cam that's in this engine is an Elgin 220-224 that has 575 lift on the intake and the exhaust. So these 600 lift springs work perfect for this cam. The reason I didn't use those springs in this engine is because this engine has a 600 lift cam. So you're at the upper limit of what those springs can do. Now, it might have been fine. I'm not sure. But instead, just to be on the safe side, here I bought Pac 1219s, which are good for up to 650 lift. So I want these springs on those heads ported. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 1218s that are on these heads and put them on that engine on these heads for right now. The reason is I'm not ready. You can see it's a little chilly today, but it's a nice sunny day out. I don't want my car to be incapacitated yet. I still want to take it out. I still want to go do some burnouts. I still want to have some fun. And I got to get this thing in and off the lift here because I still got to get some other cars inspected and things like that to get them ready here for PA inspection. So I'm not ready for this thing to be winterized yet. But I want to get heads ready and sent off and get them back so I can start work whenever I'm ready to start work. So here's my plan. I'm going to pull these valve springs off that are in this engine, and I'm going to put them on these heads to send off to Total Engine Airflow to have them ported. These springs are going to go on back on this engine, even though it's a 600 lift. That's all they're good for. It'll be good for just putting around and screwing off. I don't think I'm going to get valve float. I don't think anything serious, anything bad's going to happen. But it'll let me still be able to drive the car and get it in and out while I'm getting those ported and polished. Okay, so that's phase one of the winter work that's going to happen this winter. Is I'm going to swap cylinder heads. I'm not going to pull the motor to do that. I'm just going to pull the heads off. Phase two, if I can find it, I'll bet you I stuck it here. You're probably sick with me spinning this around. Sorry, I'm trying to find these guys. I knew I stuck them in here. Sorry about all this. I should have had all this ready. These two little deals here. You're probably wondering, what in the world is that? Well, I made these. I designed them. They're 3D printed. These are drill jigs that I made. And what they do, if you can see, you probably can't. Let me get a light. Let me get a light, and I'll show you what I'm... So, obviously, to pull the cylinder heads off this winter to swap them, I'm also going to have the intake manifolds out, or the intake manifold off. Well, I want direct port nitrous, which is why I bought this intake manifold in the first place. If you look right there, that little plastic butthole down there, that's the bung where you drill and tap for the nitrous nozzle, for a direct port nitrous nozzle. That round donut looking thing right in here, okay? So what I did is I made drill jigs that fit into those bungs. So it fits down in there. This first one is for an 1/8 inch drill bit, and it fits and holds solid into that inner portion of that bung down there, and you drill an 1/8 inch pilot. Once that 1/8 inch pilot is drilled, then I designed this second one that has this cone shape to it. And this is whatever letter gauge that is. I think, what, H? I don't remember. Whatever letter gauge you need for a 16th NPT. I forget. But anyway, you put this in, drill it a second time with a pilot already there. Now you have a perfectly spaced hole. You don't have to send it to a machine shop. And it should be angled perfect, lined up with the intake, at least as perfect as I can do. But yeah, I 3D printed these. I designed them on... I think I used Fusion 360, I don't remember. And I put it in my Cura slicer on my 3D printer. Printed them out of just PLA Plus. Yeah, real basic. I think I did 50% infill, or maybe I did do 100% infill, I don't remember. But anyway, that's kind of the next step. Get the heads off while I'm, once I get them back from T, get everything torn down, get the intake off, get it drilled for nitrous nozzles, get the nitrous nozzles installed. So I'm going to be putting on the ported heads. I'm going to drill the holes for the nitrous nozzles in there and get that back on. I may also break down and get head studs. I don't know. Everyone keeps telling me big nitrous, it can help if you have head studs. I've always been a reuse your old head bolts kind of guy on an LS, and I know you're not supposed to, but I do it anyway. But I say that I had one break when I put this motor together. I had an old head bolt break. It was a Fel Pro bolt that was from a junkyard, and it broke on me being torqued a second time. And that kind of made me a little gun shy about doing it. I was able to fish that broken bolt out of the block, but I really don't want to go through that again. And I know ARP head studs are a waste of money, and they're expensive, but I kind of want them just for the convenience of it. I just kind of want them. So I don't know. I haven't made up my mind on that yet. I might not. I don't know. I just don't know. The other big debate, or the other big thing that I'm going to do, this car already has a Dana 44 swapped in, and I have 373 gears. The drive, when this car also has a 4L80E transmission in it, and I have a forged steel drive shaft. It's a 1350 yoke drive shaft. And if you want to see that, if you look through my videos, I have a video where I talk about this project from start to finish, and I show you that drive shaft and how I modified the C-beam to make it all fit. So if you're curious how I got that to fit, check out I have another video there that you can watch. But anyway, the one thing I never addressed in this car was the half shafts. If you're not familiar with a C4 Corvette, these are an independent rear suspension. Okay, so from the differential to the wheel uses this short little drive shaft. It has a U-joint on both ends called a half shaft, okay? And it uses a 1350 U-joint, just like a 1-ton van drive shaft would have. But they're real short, and they're aluminum from the factory. 9 times out of 10, when these rear ends grenade, when you break them, what happens is that half shaft snapped. That seems to be the weak point, is the half shafts on these. Not so much the differential carrier or anything like that. Those do break too, but usually it's those half shafts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the same guy that made my drive shaft. It was Action Machine, made my drive shaft, did an amazing job, and the price was unbelievably good. Their head machinist, or at least the guy that I dealt with there, his name's Bob Guzman. I don't know if he still works there or not. I'm going to call them here next week and see what he can do for making me 2 half shafts for this, made out of DOM steel with forged welded on ends. And I know I'm going to pick up a little bit of weight from doing that, but I would gladly add that couple pounds of weight in the back to not have to worry about breaking my differential or an axle or whatever. I'll gladly convert that to steel for that. And I know he'll do a fantastic job, and I'll just never have to worry about it again. So, winter projects: swap heads with actual ported heads that weren't done by a dumb redneck in his garage. Drill the intake manifold for direct port nitrous and get the solenoid wired for that. Get the solid state relay wired for that, so the Holley computer can control progressive nitrous, and then steel half shafts in the back. I originally was going to do C5 Corvette front brakes. You can see I got coilovers on this. If you're interested in how to do coilovers on an early C4, check out my other videos. I have one talking about how I did that. C5 front brakes would be awesome. C5 or C6 front brakes would be really cool. I might do it. I don't know. It's kind of bottom of the list right now. If I get everything else done over the winter, I may visit that. I may send, there's a couple companies that will make the plate for you. I may get that and buy the parts and do C5 front brake conversion. It's just kind of bottom of my list at the moment. I would rather start working on getting some of this interior cleaned up a little bit. I've got some carpet pieces that might need replaced. Right now it's just dirty, but I might work on some cosmetic stuff. I need to take these wheels off and have them repowder coated. Just stuff. But that's about it, guys. Like I said, I just wanted to do a update video on the car. It's still ripping and tearing and doing burnouts and having a lot of fun with it. My oil consumption issues are relatively solved with the catch can. I had some oil. I was smelling a lot of burning oil whenever I was going down the road. I put a catch can in here. It fills up fast because I've got a lot of ring gap in this engine. I got, I think, 50 thousandths ring gap with Hastings rings, which is what Hastings recommended to use with nitrous. So it blows by a lot of oil. But that seems to be the only detriment. It rides and drives nice and smooth. Like I said, the only issues I've really had is now I'm running on E85. I do have some idle issues. It's running real rich at idle, but that's just my tune isn't right for ethanol yet. But I'll get there. All right, guys, that's all I got. Talk to you later. Hey, just an update. I know in the first part of this video I said bye or whatever. Well, I figured as the night went on, I would, you know, show how I'm swapping out springs. I mean, look, you can probably find like a million YouTube videos showing you how to change valve springs in an LS. So I don't know that this is really going to be any information that you're going to get from me that you couldn't get somewhere else, but I figured I would share how I did it anyway. I'm using the compressed air method to hold the valve up. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. I know some guys will turn the motor to get the piston all the way to the top, and then the valve will drop and just lay on top of the piston. And that works great, especially if you have the motor on an engine stand doing it that way. But in my case, turning this thing is kind of a pain, whereas just pulling the spark plug and threading in an air line is pretty easy. So what I did is I have the Harbor Freight compression tester kit, and it has this hose in it, and it just has a spark plug end with a O-ring on one end, and then it has this real weird, and you can't see it because I have a hose clamp to it, it has this real weird air chuck thing on this end that's supposed to plug into the gauge for the kit. I just hose clamped to it. I didn't even cut the Harbor Freight tubing. I just stuck a piece of fuel line over top of it with a clamp, and then I used a barb fitting with another hose clamp, and then an air chuck, or just a 1/4 inch air line. So this works awesome. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do this one-handed to be able to show you how awesome it works. But so you need this, and this is super cheap. I mean, because you're probably going to have the compression tester anyway. If you work on anything, you probably should have a compression tester, but you don't want to chop it up. You know what I mean? So just do this garbage piece of fuel line, 2 hose clamps, a couple fittings, throw it in your toolbox. You'll have it forever. Then this guy, this is an LS specific spring compressor tool. This is a cheapie off eBay. It does 2 valve springs at the same time. It works awesome, but you need a way really to hold the valve from the back side, which is why I like compressed air. Always remember when you're using this style, you need to bump these valves. I use that guy. I use that, whatever's, oh, I have tape on it. I use this. You just bump those valves, just tap them a couple times with a dead blow hammer, and that separates the keeper and really lets them come loose. If you skip that step, you will hate yourself. It will be much harder to get them apart. Now, I would love to show you what, if you can hear what this would sound like. Oh, maybe I can. I'm really going to try to do this one-handed. So we thread this into the spark plug hole, right? And I already have the spark plug out of this cylinder. I only pull 1 spark plug at a time. You just thread it in the best that you can with the hose, just like that. And then, oh, this is the challenge. Can I do this part one-handed? No, I can't. There's no way I can do this part one-handed. So hang on. I got to set you down here for a minute. Hang on. Okay. So I plug that in, and what's funny is my alternator's turning. Or, well, it was. And that's because it's pushing. Oh, there it did it again. Every time I move the camera, it quits. But anyway, it's moving that piston down, and you can hear it. And what you're hearing is my ridiculous ring gap in this. I've got 50 thousandths ring gap, I believe, on these on that top ring. So you're going to hear some hissing, and that's okay. I really don't care. You can also smell gas in my oil, which I know is bad in most applications, but when you have a lot of ring gap because you're running a power adder like nitrous, you just deal with it. Change your oil a lot, you know. So we tighten that down. I don't even use a magnet for this. I just reach down and pull out both halves just like that. Now again, these are pack 1218 springs. No, I'm sorry.
These are pack 1219, I believe. I might have my part numbers wrong. Either way, I think these are pack 1219s. And I'm replacing them with pack 12, the smaller ones, 18s. What's funny about that is I put the two springs side by side. They look identical. I even took a caliper and mic'd the coils, and they're the exact same thickness. So I really question if they are any different. They have the exact same height, the same coil thickness, the same number of coils. I really can't see a difference in them, but the one is rated for a 600 lift, the other one's rated for like a 650 lift. So maybe metallurgy's different. I can't really tell that. They don't really feel any different cranking down, which I know isn't really any kind of a test of how much force a spring has. But anyway, we turn this. You can hear my compressor kicking on. And give yourself, when you use this tool, give yourself lots of slack. Really turn that nut almost to the end. And the reason is it gives you the room that you need to really get this thing out without anything binding up. And then I set this over here, and then we get this guy out. So, and then when you reinstall your new springs, it's just the reverse. That's it. Okay, now the video's over.